And I just kept thinking about it. I'm sorry. You're helping me help. It's amazing, to see how far this horse has come.
It's not easy, it's hard. We would rather starve than let our horses starve. We want the horses. We want to help them. We want to be able to make a difference in their lives.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Horse Plus Humane Society, the Full Circle of Life Network, or any of their employees or management. The information contained in this presentation is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. Any reliance you place on such information is strictly at your own risk. We strongly encourage you to conduct your own independent research and seek professional advice as needed.
So we're already ready to start. Not everybody's here, but if you're not back in time, then you might get missing out on something. So our next presenter, she teaches people how to save animals from burning barns. She started animal controls across Tennessee. Now she's the shelter manager at Horse Plus Humane Society. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Chandra Davis.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chandra Davis. I'm the shelter manager at Horse Plus Humane Society. I'm actually the new shelter manager. I've been here about a month now and very much enjoying my new role here at Horse Plus Humane Society. Okay, it's working. My background is in sheltering as well as animal care and control across Tennessee and some in Kentucky. I spent 11 years on the NFPA 150 Animal Housing Units Committee. I've been a retired fire lieutenant, 23 years. I'm a 9/11 Ground Zero responder as well, and I do instruct on barn fire response as one of my many instructions across the country for firefighters, rescues, animal sheltering, people like yourselves, things like that, to teach you about what to do. It's a great tool for horse rescues because you guys will be called in not only to help remove the horses, but if your fire departments are not trained in barn fire response, you can oftentimes talk with the incident command, and that we'll talk about today and what to do and what you can do as a horse rescue to work with your local fire department to get on board for how to respond to barn fires and other types of fires you can and will respond to with a trailer to help get animals out, and it may not only be horses. Do you know what to do and learn how to be ready and how to combat these kind of fires? Some of these may be very basic information, folks. I know you guys are very experienced, but a lot of times these classes I do write are made for very basic folks that do take these kind of classes, and I'm just being upfront. Emergency responders are oftentimes not trained with animals, so if need be, I will skip over some of these. Again, Dr. Gimenez, she's out of Georgia. She's also one of my colleagues. She's also a really great colleague if you ever need further training too on operations levels. 88% of barns and stables contained animals, resulting in about $250 million, and that was done in 2022 in property loss. They always say property loss because animals in the United States are considered property still in most states. They are not considered anything else but property. No different than the shoes on my feet, they're considered property. Statistics. And this is old statistics, but this is what I could find. In 87 horse barn fires reported in 06 and 07, 461 horses died and an unknown number were injured. You have roughly about 3 minutes to respond to a barn fire. They run the attics very quickly, mainly because a lot of times hay is oftentimes stored above in the egress or underneath where the manure pits are. So a lot of times, a lot of barns, the manure pits are halfway manure pits, and a lot of times they have them halfway in the hays. And I'm referring to like dairy barns, for examples. You know, if you get like in Pennsylvania and certain states like that, You'd be amazed how these are, and if you're international also, sometimes they're stored that way. When I was in Austria and overseas, a lot of the hay was actually stored underneath their dairy facilities at like the universities and things. Things you would never think, but the hay was underground. So if the hay catches fire, what happens next? It burns right through the floor. What happens next? The animals fall through the floor and there's no saving those animals. And it oftentimes goes up in a matter of minutes. It's heartbreaking, but there's not much you can do, unfortunately, with these kind of things. And of course, number one thing is you. You know, your number one safety is always number one. And do always remember that, no matter how heartbreaking a call can be, your number one safety is always number one. Again, it's estimated that over 5,000 barn fires occur every year. I was just watching the news last week, and there was a barn fire in Pennsylvania, actually of all states. I was watching on the news, and it went up in flames. Kentucky had one just recently due to the tornadoes. They had one go through. So, I mean, they occur weekly. You know, they don't always make the national news, but if you just Google barn fires, you'll find them every week across the country that there's a barn that goes up in flames. And unfortunately, it's very, very far in between that only very few horses or other animals do make it out alive. Always check your surroundings. One thing that we've always learned in the fire service, folks, and this goes for you too, always do what we call a 360. In other words, check the surroundings all the way around you. If you're first on scene to a barn fire because you beat the fire department there, don't go running into that burning facility saying, I'm going to save this horse, I'm going to save these cows, these goats, whatever's in that building. Check all the way around that barn and see how many exits there are, how many windows there are, and to see what exactly is going on around that building. Even if it's burning all the way around, see how many exits you have and entrances are in that building. It's always important to take a look at the structure and what exactly is going on with that building and how it engulfed that fire actually is. Because if it's not fully engulfed like what is showing here in this photo, you may have a way to get in there with the fire department to get in there and safely remove animals. Again, horses are the most common barn fires in the country, as you know. They are most done by horse owners, not by horse owners, but they're nationally during the emergencies. Horses must always be approached with caution, as of course you all know. And horses will always run back to the barn, as you guys all know, same thing with cattle. But horses always run back to the barn as well as cattle. So if you're given the opportunity and you get the horses out, keep them away from the barn. And if the firefighters are able to, if you're actually able to talk to the firefighters, holler at them quickly and tell them, shut that stall. If they can, if they have to just kick it shut, shut the stall in order to keep them from going back. And if you're able to, get them in some kind of a temporary corral. As a horse rescue, you guys may be able to have a trailer set up as an emergency disaster setup, you know, with panels already in it, ready to roll. That's very common nowadays as a horse rescue. Sometimes you guys can have a disaster setup already ready to go. So if you have panels already ready to go, you can set up a temporary pen and have it ready to roll. So when you get to a fire, you can put the pen up. When the animals come out with injuries, you have a triage unit. How much time do you have to save the horses? Straw reaches a burning temperature of 300 Fahrenheit in 1 to 5 minutes. It is a material that has developed as much heat at the same rate as gasoline. It takes 2 to 3 minutes for a straw fire to burn in an area of 10 feet per diameter, if that makes sense. So straw burns very hot, just as hay does. Various kinds of hay do burn at various degrees. However, it all burns about the same. It's going to go up in a matter of moments. As I always tell folks, you know, don't smoke cigarettes near hay. If you can, make sure you have a no smoking sign in your barn and do that kind of thing. I always recommend as a horse rescue, too, if you're able to, go out to your local barns, visit your local stables in your areas, do a walkthrough with them. You guys are some of the experts also, besides the fire department. Meet with your local fire departments. You know, become friends with them in the sense that say, hey, you know, we can offer training. You know, maybe not on what I teach on specifically, but you can offer the basic training of if there was a fire, you know, let's work on getting the animals out, let's practice getting the animals out. The basic knowledge of what to do if there was a fire, at least get be friends with the fire department and that kind of thing. You'd be amazed what kind of things you guys can learn from each other as a team and work well together. Again, how fast will the fire injure a horse? At only 4 feet in diameter, most horses are injured from the legs. Of course, obviously that's because the fire is going to burn up. So you're going to have burn injuries on the legs is very the most common, or the belly. Again, you're always going to want to have your large animal veterinarian on standby. The best thing to do is work with the fire department on this, and 911 is have a memorandum of understanding with your 911 office, and your fire department is the best person to work with, is have them have your 911 coordinate with the large animal veterinarian in the area, so that way when there is a barn fire or large animal rescue, which we'll be talking about tomorrow, you can have them on the call. So when the tones are dropped for a fire department for a barn fire, and you're toned out hopefully for a fire, you can have the large animal veterinarian called immediately, and they'll be en route to the scene to help you triage the horses immediately. Because you guys are horse rescue, so that way you can set up an emergency pen, your veterinarian will be coming out, you will know who your veterinarians are coming out to your scene, you can work on triaging hopefully the horses, you can hopefully be moving the horses to a large animal veterinarian facility. You'd be amazed what an asset each and every one of you are here in this room today. This is a little bit about firefighting, more or less, when I do teach us for firefighting. The stages of fire is the inset phase, which is pretty much the start of the fire, where it starts. Most fires have a V that starts the fire, so if you ever go in after a fire and you walk through a barn, for example, with the fire department to look at where the fire starts, you oftentimes look for a V pattern in a barn or the facility. Extremely dangerous, extremely unpredictable. The growth stage of the fire, as far as the development and the growth of the fire. The intense heat production, it takes about minutes after a flame eruption for ceiling temps to exceed 1800 degrees, which is why I was saying, please don't go in the barn trying to be that savior of one horse or one animal or multiple animals, because you are only going to get hurt from smoke inhalation. Horses will die sooner from smoke inhalation than they were the fire themselves. Pretty much a decay stage of a fire is when the fire has all much burnt out. It's pretty much the death of the fire in examples. Sometimes you have rekindles of fires, but of course that's for the fire department to worry about after the fact. Pretty much the killing attribute of a fire with horses and large animals is going to be the smoke, the CO that binds the fire actually faster in the blood hemoglobin faster than the oxygen. The suffocation, even if sufficient oxygen is present, it's going to be the heat. The air contains superheated masses of gases, and what happens when inhaled, it seals your respiratory tract. So just like humans and animals, like horses, it's going to sear their respiratory tract all the way down. That's what actually kills the horses, is smoke inhalation, just like humans alike. Again, this is always good if you guys do a walkthrough of a barn with owners to go through and walk through a barn. Make sure they have their ABC fire extinguishers and have a pre-plan in place. Always check, for example, this is like some more fire prevention, but this is good for you guys to know. Dust. Dust is a very common thing. If you have a very, very dusty old barn where they keep horses or goats or pigs, whatever's in there, make sure, like they occasionally go through there with a leaf blower and get the dust blowing off. It's a very common reason for fires to start. Make sure they have commercial grade smoke alarms, and they don't just go to Lowe's and buy your basic household smoke alarms and think it's okay to stick those outside in a barn. Again, residential smoke alarms, again, will not work in a stable setting. Your tags and your fire extinguisher should be checked. Make sure they're in date. They're very common forgotten in barns and just left out there for years to come, and you'll find that there's rust on the bottom of an ABC fire extinguisher can, and the thing's 10 years old, out of date, and it's not going to work when you most need it. If they have, like the big fancy barns, for example, they oftentimes have standpipes, and they're going to have 100 feet of fire hose on one of those little things like you see in hospitals. Make sure that they have a minimum, what's called 100 PSI, which is pretty much the pressure of the fire hose, and it's about an inch fire hose, in their barn on the roll, so that way they have enough there for immediate fire suppression in a barn, is pretty much what that is saying. Check the anatomy of your facility. Ask the following questions. Have 911 have the caller list have a caller list for the initial call. In other words, if it is a barn, you know they have commercial horses in there, make sure their address is correct and that they don't have 2 addresses listed for their stables. That's very common, You could have the house listed as one address and the Humane Society, even like us, have another address. So you always want to make sure that everything is listed the same, that the stables has one address and that 911 is going to know that is where you come to at all times. Also, have an evacuation plan set for the horses and the person for the barn and facility managers to evacuate those animals. So if you guys go out there, you can set up a temporary pen, you have the veterinarian en route, you got everything going on, and you know who management is at that facility. So if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and nobody's on site, you're not trying to break in the facility going, well, who's in charge? Who runs this facility? That kind of thing. Where are the combustibles stored? Hay, shavings, stall planks, where's the wood stored? I mean, you'd be amazed how many things are just around there. Also, another good thing to know about is do they have little box fans with a little, the wide electrical fans, cords with extension cords plugged up on the hot summer months on the ceiling, to keep the horses cool. They're not very safe. They're very common electrical hazards. So always check for little things like that. It's little things that you don't think about every day in the horse world, but you just never know what you're going to run into. And a lot of folks don't think about the little everyday things, but it's things like that can start a fire. And just like in the tack room, for example, always check for your cleaning products, always check for any alcohol-based products. I don't mean drinking products, folks. I mean oils and cleaning products that may contain cleaning agents. Again, are the stalls locked? Do the stalls locked? Are there any, they just have the webbing up, for example, that kind of thing. Are there any obstacles in the way? Are there any obstacles blocking the aisles, for example, wheelbarrows, things like that, You never know. Is there a side-by-side parked in the middle of the aisle? I mean, you just never know what you're going to run into. For example, these are just common obstacles of a barn. So always just keep your eyes open, but it's always good to go do a walkthrough with your local stables. And that way they get to know you guys personally, they get your numbers, it makes you guys have a new contact out there, and it puts you guys on the map with your local stables and facilities all over your counties and your region, depending on how large you are and where all you travel to. Anyway, just remember for fire departments, if they come on scene to you guys, ask them always to shut off their emergency lights, just in the sense that they're really bright, and horses just don't like very bright lights, and that's just the same thing with turnout gear. So pretty much this is more for emergency responders. Pretty much closing gates, exiting gates, positioning vehicles, and this goes for you guys too. If you guys have your trailers and your trucks and things, you can, but as long as the emergency responders can get into where they need to get to, you guys can position your trucks and trailers in a position to help the firefighters keep the animals contained, is what I'm trying to say. So always just speak to the incident commander in charge at the fire department or whomever's in charge. It could even be animal control in your county. I don't know. You have to go back and speak to your state. But it could be animal care and control in your county. Find out who's in charge, and you guys can help position your vehicles to even help contain the animals depending on the size of what you're dealing with. Again, if horses are loose on the side of a barn fire, every attempt should be made to gain control of the animals. They do pose an enormous risk to the firefighters. They do for yourself, the public, and the people on scene. So just remember, folks, do what you can to safely rescue the animals on scene. Anyway, just expect the horses directly involved with the fire to either be in the paddock building closely in proximity to the burning barn. Of course, like anything, they're going to be visibly upset. They'll be visibly panicked and things like that. Just know that, as you guys know, working with panicked animals and things like that, that you're just going to have to take more caution and more time with them to keep them calm. Generally, you can, if they are dying or anything like that, just work your large animal veterinarian to do what's the last act of kindness for them. But remember, always speak to the owner of those animals, the stable owners or whoever you're at, first before anything of the last act of kindness is completed. And I always say that because you just never know. Every state has different laws. Is the only reason why I'm saying that, folks. And I mean, this can happen in your jurisdiction. So you just never know where a fire can happen, what can happen, and what you're going to encounter. Just remember that, the blankets and things are combustible. They're going to go up in minutes. It poses a real safety issue, not, for everybody else, but for yourself too. Anyway, most barn fires always happen at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. That is the most common time, and during the winter. Unfortunately, those are the most common times because that's when the heat's going. And, less time during the summertime, but it does make it more difficult because it's dark. You can't see what's in front of you. You can't see what's underneath you. So always make sure that if you're not trained in, honestly, really in the rescue efforts, do try to be careful with that part of it because you don't know what's under your feet. And I say that unless you have something like a pike pole from the fire department to sound the floor, going in a barn or anything like that, you don't know what is under your feet, and you do not want to become a statistic because your life is just as important as everybody else's. And this is just an example of a barn that is on fire. And again, just make sure that you make a plan. And like I said, this is great for the rescues because you guys could do this, completely build a plan, work with your stables, work with the other rescues in your areas. I mean, this is a great networking opportunity, and to be honest with you, y'all can go back and even work with your animal care and control agencies. And this is just an ace in the hole for all the rescues to be able to take this back to your areas and build upon it. And I'm serious, I mean, really build upon it because this will make it to where you guys can go in and say, hey, we can build a plan, we can build a whole new prevention to help save lives in a whole different manner. You're not just, the live ones, but if you have a fire or anything else, you guys can build a plan and mitigate it with your fire department. And it's a wonderful win-win situation for all of you together, to go back to your said states and develop something wonderful. And it just means that you guys can work better with your neighboring agencies and, 911 and everything else. Because you'd be amazed that when you have unification, it just makes things all the better for you in the future. And as far as this goes, as you probably know, bales can collapse under the weight. It takes about 400 gallons of water on a fire engine to put out 1 round bale of hay. Again, ignition of barns. The rafters are very common because, like I said, again, the ventilation escape is very poor. Again, the hay and other combustibles are often located high or underneath, and the wood increases the spread of the fire very, very quickly, and it's very hot. As you guys know, the animals will run back to the barn. Again, smoke inhalation I already have gone over. Again, now, if there is a very large animal loss of life, you will want to work with the owners, your fire department, and find out in your area, because your fire department is probably not going to know, is what your Dead Animal Disposal Act is in your state, in your county. And that is a huge one, because not only will you maybe have to do the act of kindness, but you're going to have to find out if it's legal to dig a hole, dig a pit. Do you have to, what your method of disposal actually is in your state and your county. And not all counties are going to have a plan in place to do that. And so that's something you guys may want to look into as a prevention method. So should something occur, you've already got a plan in place.
Do you know the best person in our county to find that information out, or the best place to look for that information?
Which state are you from?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. I would recommend 2 places. This is where I would start. Either your state veterinary office and also your county health department. And those are 2 places that I would check with. Every state has different rules and county ordinances. But your state health department in your county would probably be your best bet over the state Department of Health for your Wisconsin, and if not, your state Department of Veterinary.
So thank you for the information. That was super helpful.
Thank you.
we are from a super small town, so
Yes, ma'am.
we are on the fire department. It's just the way it works.
You're like me.
Yeah, so I was going to ask if this slide or this presentation or something similar to this is available for us to share with our department. Although it is a rural area and the majority of the firefighters are farmers, so they understand it, but it would
Yeah.
be very nice to share that. And I think it would also be nice for us as the fire department to share it, maybe even do like a demo type thing on our next town event, because this would be great for any of the volunteers, anybody in town to just be able to kind of jump in and say, we want to help, but we don't know what to do, we don't know horses. So this would be really great information to share. Is that something that's available to us?
Do you mind me asking where you're from?
Nebraska.
Nebraska? I mean,
Yes,
I'll be
ma'am.
honest with you, I teach this all over the country.
Do you want to come to Nebraska? Come on, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
can, yes, that is totally available.
Yeah.
And I'll be instructing tomorrow also.
Okay.
So normally what I try to do is tag team the classes
Okay.
in order to make it available and worth the department's time.
Sounds good. Yeah. If we can just get any of this information or, whatever you have to share, this was very helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No, thank you. We can talk after class.
So, not the rescue barn, but my personal barn.
Yes.
About a year or two after we moved in, we survived what was one of the biggest fires in the United States for a while. So I went ahead and
Wow.
looked into a bunch of this in depth. And so this may not be relevant if you don't live in a super high forest fire area. But something that we do is every year or three, we have the fire department come out. We show them where we store our hay. We show them where we store our fuel. We give them some idea of how many animals are on the property
Awesome.
and where they are. First of all, they appreciate that because that's us looking out for their safety.
Yes, ma'am.
But the other thing I've noticed is that when I take their report and turn it over to my insurance company, it often helps my insurance rates go down. And I thought everybody might like to hear that.
Yes, ma'am, your ISO will go down. That's amazing. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for sharing.
Any more questions? You did a very good job explaining everything, I guess. Anyway.
Thank you.